Madame, Monsieur, bonjour et bienvenue au Club Suisse de la Presse. Je suis très heureuse d'accueillir ce lundi midi l'ONG Handicap International pour une conférence de presse sur le thème « Les défis humanitaires à Gaza entre réadaptation et déminage ». Good morning, welcome to the Geneva Press Club, welcome to those following online as well. I'm pleased to welcome this Monday noon the NGO Humanitarian Inclusion, HI, for a press conference on the theme, the humanitarian challenges in Gaza between rehabilitation and mine clearance. À quelques jours un an du début du conflit actuel à Gaza, Handicap International souhaite alerter les médias, la communauté internationale et le public sur la situation actuelle dans la bande de Gaza, des personnes en situation de handicap, ainsi que sur l'urgence du travail indispensable en termes de déminage. Just a few days before the first year sad anniversary of the start of the current conflict in Gaza, HI wishes to alert the media, international community and the public about the current situation of people with disabilities in Gaza, as well as the urgent need for demining work. Alors cette conférence de presse va se dérouler de la manière suivante. Nous entendrons tout d'abord en français Daniel Suda-Lang, qui est directeur de Handicap International Suisse, qui rappellera le contexte général hautement complexe de l'aide humanitaire actuelle à Gaza. Then we will hear in English Maria Marelli, physiotherapy specialist at HI, and finally we'll listen to Nicholas Orr, a deminer with more than 25 years of experience in explosive ordnance disposal, and Nick is also head of operations for HI in Gaza. Et puis nous prendrons à la fin, Madame, Monsieur, vos questions par oral ou par écrit pour ceux qui nous suivent en ligne, en anglais ou en français, et puis poursuivrons la discussion autour d'un verre ou d'un sandwich. J'ai le plaisir d'inviter tout de suite Daniel Suda-Lang, le directeur de Handicap International Suisse, à me rejoindre. Bonjour Daniel Suda-Lang, bienvenue au Club Suisse de la Presse.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup de nous avoir ici.
Alors, à quelques jours un an du début du conflit actuel à Gaza, quelle est, aux yeux de Handicap International Suisse que vous dirigez, la situation actuelle à Gaza des personnes spécifiquement en situation de handicap, Daniel?
Alors, merci beaucoup Isabelle, merci encore pour votre accueil. C'est un plaisir d'être ici au Club Suisse de la Presse pour parler de cette thématique importante. On est heureux d'être là pour apporter notre témoignage et puis d'alerter sur cette situation absolument grave à Gaza actuellement. Une année de bombardement et de pilonnage continue à Gaza se traduit évidemment par une génération souffrant de blessures, d'amputations et de handicap à vie. Selon un récent rapport de l'OMS, l'Organisation mondiale de la santé, on décompte entre janvier et mai 2024, 25% des personnes blessées à Gaza, soit environ 25 000 personnes sur 90 000 qui ont besoin d'urgence de services de rééducation. Ce chiffre met en évidence l'énorme pression exercée sur les capacités de rééducation limitées à Gaza et le besoin crucial d'un soutien immédiat pour prévenir les handicaps à long terme dus à des blessures non traitées. Je l'ai dit, ce conflit entraîne des graves blessures, notamment la perte de membres, de lésions de la moelle épinière, des lésions cérébrales traumatiques et d'autres handicaps physiques dus à l'utilisation d'armes explosives. Il y a un autre élément qui s'ajoute, c'est les restrictions de mouvement et les barrages qui empêchent l'acheminement des fournitures médicales, de l'équipement et de l'expertise nécessaire à une réadaptation physique efficace. Ma collègue Maria, ici à côté, elle va parler un peu plus de ça tout à l'heure. En raison de l'effondrement du système médical de Gaza, la majorité des amputés ont encore des plaies ouvertes, des brûlures et des fractures non traitées, ainsi que des éclats d'obus dans le corps. Certains d'entre eux ont même des éclats d'obus dans la tête. Les plaies ouvertes et la peau gravement endommagée doivent être pensées pour éviter les infections. À Gaza, la demande d'appareils d'assistance augmente avec les nouvelles blessures causées par l'escalade militaire. De nombreux appareils sont détruits ou laissés sur place lorsque les personnes handicapées doivent fuir vers des abris plus sûrs.
Alors on sait qu'en tant que les travailleurs humanitaires aujourd'hui à Gaza sont, d'ailleurs tout comme les journalistes, j'en profite de le rappeler puisque nous sommes au Club suisse de la presse, ont un contexte de travail extrêmement compliqué. Donc pouvez-vous rappeler le contexte général extrêmement complexe, compliqué, dangereux de l'aide humanitaire actuelle à Gaza?
Oui, avec plaisir. Donc, si on se base sur les informations de l'OCHA, donc le Bureau de coordination des affaires humanitaires de l'ONU, les civils de Gaza subissent de plein fouet les opérations militaires. Au mois d'août, plus de 88% de la bande de Gaza est restée sous le coup d'ordre d'évacuation. Des centaines de milliers de familles déplacées continuent d'être contraintes de se déplacer dans une zone d'environ 47 km², ce qui correspond approximativement à 13% de la superficie totale de Gaza. C'est devenu totalement surpeuplé et puis il y a un manque cruel d'infrastructures et de services essentiels. Entre le 7 octobre 2023 et puis maintenant septembre 2024, plus de 41 000 Palestiniens ont été tués et puis plus de 95 000 ont été blessés selon le ministre de la Santé à Gaza. Les personnes déplacées risquent de l'être encore plus à l'approche de la saison des pluies qui augmente le risque d'inondation et les marées hautes. Après, il y a des enjeux liés aux médicaments et puis aux installations sanitaires. Donc, le ministère de la Santé indique que 70% des médicaments et 83% des fournitures médicales avaient été épuisés. Et ce grave déficit a contraint les hôpitaux et les établissements de santé à suspendre le service et des procédures vitales telles que les opérations cardiaques, les cathétérismes cardiaques ou encore les remplacements d'articulation. Après, au niveau donc, de l'acheminement de l'aide, donc, le nombre de camions qui entrent chaque jour dans Gaza continue de diminuer. La moyenne journalière était de 69 camions par jour, c'est en train de baisser. Le gouvernement israélien continue d'imposer des restrictions strictes à l'acheminement de l'aide à Gaza. D'une part, il y a la complexité des procédures bureaucratiques et d'autre part l'évolution des normes, donc il y a toujours des nouvelles lois. Ça fait que parfois les denrées alimentaires et les fournitures médicales arrivent à expiration avant même qu'on soit capable de les livrer. Les fournitures de Handicap International, tels que les kits médicaux ou les colis alimentaires, sont restées si longtemps en attente aux postes frontières qu'elles ont expiré ou qui se sont détériorées, ce qui les rend malheureusement inutilisables.
Alors, Handicap International, vous êtes actuellement présent sur le terrain à Gaza. Pouvez-vous, Daniel Suda-Lang, nous expliquer comment vous êtes présent sur le terrain, avec quels moyens à la fois en personnes, en ressources humaines et en matériel, et puis pour quel type d'activité est-ce que vous êtes aujourd'hui présent à Gaza?
Oui, merci beaucoup pour cette question. Donc, Handicap International est une fédération internationale qui est donc constituée de plusieurs associations nationales. Donc, la Suisse en est une, et par une cinquantaine de pays d'intervention, dont Gaza. Avec des chiffres donc, de août 24, nous avions une équipe de 70 personnes actives à Gaza. Et nous travaillons également avec ce qu'on appelle des agents communautaires qui sont au nombre d'environ 300. Nos efforts se concentrent à Khan Younes, à Gaza Centre et dans le sud de la bande de Gaza. Je pense que nous avons quelques photos qui peuvent tourner pour illustrer un peu les activités que nous menons à Gaza. Donc, d'une part, ce sont des activités c'est pas dans l'ordre, de distribution de matériel de besoins de base. Donc, les équipes que nous avons à Gaza distribuent des biens de première nécessité. Ça peut être des kits de soins, de cuisine, d'hygiène, encore des couches ou des couvertures pour bébés. Nous avons une branche logistique qui s'appelle Atlas Logistique, qui s'occupe du transport et puis aussi de stockage de ces biens. Après, comme vous pouvez voir sur les photos, nous menons également des activités d'aide d'urgence et de réadaptation, donc avec la prise en charge des blessés graves et des personnes handicapées, et nous leur fournissons du matériel de soins. Il y a bien évidemment les activités de déminage et puis d'éducation au risque des explosifs de guerre. Ça, c'est mon collègue Nick ici à côté qui va vous donner plus d'informations tout à l'heure. Des activités de soutien psychosocial avec des séances de premier secours psychologique pour assurer et pour soutenir les personnes impactées par le conflit. Et comme vous pouvez également voir, nous avons aussi des activités destinées aux enfants où les jeux sont particulièrement importants pour apaiser les angoisses.
Alors, Handicap International est présent depuis déjà 1997 sur le terrain de Gaza. Alors, en 20 ans, comment est-ce que le travail de Handicap International a-t-il évolué à Gaza? Quels sont les défis nouveaux et quelle peut-être est la philosophie de travail différente?
En effet, bientôt 20 ans de présence à Gaza. Au fil des ans, le travail de HI, comme on l'appelle, donc Handicap International à Gaza, et en Cisjordanie s'est considérablement développé en réponse à des besoins humanitaires qui sont croissants, causés par les escalades répétées de la violence et les blocus en cours, ainsi que la détérioration des conditions socio-économiques. Donc c'est surtout le champ d'action de notre organisation qui s'est élargi pour petit à petit inclure d'autres activités comme des programmes d'intervention d'urgence, la sensibilisation aux risques liés aux engins explosifs, mais également beaucoup de travail lié à la santé mentale, donc le soutien psychosocial. Nous travaillons également beaucoup pour les droits des personnes handicapées, pour vraiment faire porter la voix aussi des personnes handicapées dans cette situation humanitaire qui est déjà difficile vraiment pour tout le monde.
Justement, on ne parle quasiment pas des personnes qui étaient déjà en situation de handicap avant la guerre actuelle, des personnes estimées à plus de 20% de la population à Gaza, selon OCHA. Est-ce que, selon vous, c'est grave qu'on ne parle pas de cette catégorie de personnes déjà en situation de handicap avant la guerre ?
Oui, bien sûr. Donc, il y a un taux des personnes handicapées dans nos sociétés qui est donc évalué à environ 20% au niveau global. Donc, c'est aussi en Suisse. On ne le voit pas toujours, on ne le sait pas toujours. Il y a environ 1 personne sur 5 qui vit avec un handicap. À Gaza, en effet, avant ce conflit, on estimait à 21% la part de la population vivant avec un handicap. Ça s'est très certainement aggravé depuis le 7 octobre. Nous pensons de manière significative, et puis ce chiffre va encore malheureusement continuer à augmenter, bien sûr, car les bombardements ne sont pas terminés. C'est des bombardements incessants qui continuent de provoquer des nouvelles blessures, des amputations et des handicaps.
Alors, une bonne nouvelle à Genève cet été, c'est qu'on a eu l'occasion de revoir, remise à neuf, votre fameuse Broken Chair, signée de l'artiste suisse Daniel Berset, mise à neuf sur la place des Nations. Et félicitations parce que depuis plusieurs décennies qu'elle est installée sur la place des Nations, elle est devenue un véritable symbole de la Genève internationale, en plus évidemment d'être un symbole de la lutte contre le déminage. Mais est-ce que c'est un symbole, à vos yeux, toujours utile et apprécié pour les raisons pour lesquelles elle a été créée, évidemment, par Daniel Berset tout au début?
Voilà, merci beaucoup pour cette question. Et puis, je prends volontiers vos félicitations que je partage volontiers avec mon équipe qui est ici en partie dans la salle. Donc, c'était un gros travail de rénovation. Ça nous a mobilisés sur une bonne partie de l'année. Ça a également nécessité des soutiens financiers de plusieurs fondations que nous aimerions remercier ici. Après, c'est aussi un peu ambivalent de recevoir des félicitations, qu'elles soient toujours là, parce que nous, en fait, ce qu'on aimerait, c'est qu'il n'y en ait plus besoin. Parce que je le rappelle, cette chaise, nous l'avons érigée ensemble avec l'artiste Daniel Berset dans le cadre des négociations pour interdire l'émine antipersonnelle, donc dans les négociations pour le traité d'Ottawa, parce que justement nous pensons, nous étions convaincus que nous devions rappeler aux États leurs obligations de mieux protéger les civils. Quelques années plus tard, nous l'avions utilisé, si j'ose utiliser ce terme, nous l'avions utilisé pour notre combat pour interdire les bombes à sous-munitions, et encore récemment dans notre dernière campagne qui s'appelle EWIPA pour Explosive Weapons in Populated Areas, pour encore une fois mieux protéger les civils dans les conflits, parce que de nos jours les conflits sont surtout dans des situation urbaine très densément peuplée. Donc elle est toujours là. Nous sommes contents de l'avoir, c'est notre porte-parole, mais en même temps, nous aimerions tous qu'il n'y en ait plus besoin, et puis que, enfin, les civils dans les conflits soient mieux protégés et qu'on cesse vraiment à bombarder les villes où il y a beaucoup de monde, et un contexte encore beaucoup plus dramatique qui est celui de Gaza, où les gens, ils n'ont nulle part à aller en fait.
Une dernière question un peu plus générale. Alors l'OMS, l'Organisation mondiale de la santé, a voté l'an dernier une résolution historique que vous avez vous-même saluée, engageant les pays à développer et à renforcer les services de réadaptation dans leur système de santé. Pourquoi est-ce que cette résolution était importante à vos yeux, aux yeux de Handicap International, et qu'est-ce que cela va ou peut changer concrètement ?
Alors oui, nous l'avons salué, et puis nous avons aussi intensivement contribué à cette résolution par nos efforts de lobbying, nos efforts de plaidoyer que nous faisons depuis de nombreuses années. Donc notre organisation, depuis toujours, d'une part, on est sur le terrain auprès des personnes qui ont besoin de nos services. D'autre part, nous sommes dans les cercles diplomatiques et d'influence pour amener le changement au niveau politique. Donc nous avons intensément collaboré à cette résolution, et puis évidemment, nous sommes très heureux qu'elle a pu être aboutie l'année passée. Elle est importante parce que la réadaptation nous concerne tous. Toutes ici dans cette salle, cela vous est déjà arrivé d'avoir besoin de faire appel à un professionnel de la rééducation, de la réadaptation après une blessure, par exemple, une blessure de ski, une blessure de vélo, je ne sais pas quoi. Donc c'est important si on veut regagner la mobilité, l'autonomie, la bonne santé. Donc ici, on est en Suisse, on est dans un des pays les plus riches au monde. Tout le monde est d'accord que le système de santé n'est pas forcément les mêmes dans d'autres pays. Donc nous voulions vraiment arriver à une résolution qui concerne le monde entier, qui oblige les États à introduire la réadaptation dans leur politique de santé respective.
Merci beaucoup, Daniel Suda-Lang. Je rappelle que vous êtes directeur de Handicap International Suisse, et vous serez évidemment à disposition après pour des questions à la fin de ces présentations. Je vous remercie. Et puis, j'invite à vous remplacer à ce micro Maria Marelli. Bonjour, bienvenue. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the Geneva Press Club, Maria. Maria Marelli, you're born in Italy, and you work as a physiotherapy specialist for HI, both here in Geneva and on the field in different countries. You were in Gaza a few months ago, this spring.
Yes.
How is your expertise and experience in the field of physiotherapy essential today in Gaza and generally in countries in crisis, different crisis situations?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having us. I thank you really for bringing again rehabilitation on the table when we talk about humanitarian setting. It's not the first time that I've been asked these questions. Why do we need rehabilitation? Why do we need physiotherapists when it comes to humanitarian crisis? And I always try to, bring back the question to where we are. So this is in every country where we live, in Switzerland as well, the protocol is to start rehabilitation as soon as possible after an injury, after a surgery. So if you have, as Daniel was saying, an injury, you go to the hospital, you have a surgery, what you do is that you will have rehabilitation sessions the first day after the surgery. So let's say that you have, speaking very like an example, you have a fracture below your knee. What would the physiotherapist do? The physiotherapist needs to make sure that the joint above and below your knee, so either your knee according to the fracture or your hip and your ankle move correctly. Why? Because we don't want to have contracture. So we want that as soon as the injury on the bone is healed, you can walk immediately. So you don't have to have contracture, so you need to be able to move quite freely at your hip level, at your knee level, at your ankle level, and you want the other leg to be strong, you want to keep the balance, you want to continue to be able to go back to your normal day life as soon as possible. When we talk about humanitarian context, this is even more important because we are in a situation in which we have a number of injuries that is skyrocketing. So we have a lot of people that have a lot of injuries, and we have few healthcare services. So right now in Gaza, only a handful of hospitals are working, only a handful of healthcare professionals are available and still working. And you have a lot of injuries happening in a very short time. So what you want to do is to have people that enter in the hospital and exit very quickly. So you need to have that recharge very fast. And what the physiotherapists do is literally to have the person as independent as possible, as soon as possible. So you can have this person going out of the bed from the hospital 2 days after, 3 days after, as soon as possible from the surgery, and so you can have another person that gets the surgery, and so you continue. So the physiotherapist is really important to make sure that this person gets independent as soon as possible. And so when we're talking about humanitarian crisis, we are thinking about, larger number of people, lower number of healthcare and healthcare facility and healthcare staff. But if you think about when you get injury, you also have your family and your friends that helps you. So they come to the hospital, they bring you what you need. When you go home, they help you to wash yourself, they help you to get dressed. This is not happening in the humanitarian crisis because most of the time your caregiver is also injured or has been killed, or it has other injuries, other person with injuries to take care of. So you need to be as independent as possible, and that's where the physiotherapy is really helping you. Another thing that we do in the humanitarian crisis, so we are talking a lot about people, so what we do when a person gets injury. But think also that in humanitarian crisis, the physiotherapists might not be accustomed with the type of injuries that they see, because we're talking about massive injuries, complex injuries, and maybe a physiotherapist that has only worked in a white country has never seen it. So what we do is also to train healthcare workforce on how do you treat this type of complex injuries.
And what are, Maria, precisely the needs for physiotherapy today in Gaza?
So, as Daniel was saying, we had a very good technical note that has been developed by the World Health Organization end of July of this year. They estimate that about 25% of people with injury will need a long-term rehabilitation. So it doesn't mean a rehabilitation after the injury, it means a long-term care. So the note came out considering the number for the 23rd of July, that was about 90,000 injured. Accordingly to the humanitarian situation updates of the 17th of September, we are talking about 95,000 injuries already. So we're talking approximately 23,500 people that are in need of rehabilitation, long-term rehabilitation care. And these are only fresh injuries. So injuries that occurred from the war. There are, as we said, 10,000s of people that had injuries before. We are thinking about children with cerebral palsy. We're thinking about previous amputations. We know that Gaza has not, Gaza is a humanitarian crisis for many, many years. So you have injuries from previous war that were there. So on top of these 23.5 thousand people, there are the tens of thousands of people that already had pre-existing injury. One thing also to note that is very important from a rehabilitation perspective is that we're talking about people, okay? 23.5 thousand people. We know that in conflicts with high-populated area, about 1/3 or 1/2 of people that are injured have multiple injury. So if we talk about rehabilitation needs or healthcare needs, we're talking about 23.5 thousand people, but we're talking about the double of injuries. So it means that if we have to count amputations, fractures, so the need for rehabilitation, so the injury, it's double of the number of the people injured. So if we're talking about access to assistive technology, access to prosthetics, you need to double that number, approximately, 1/3 to double that number. When we talk about bandages, all the equipment that you need to care for a person, you need to care for multiple injuries.
Well, these are huge needs.
Yeah.
What is HI doing or trying to do to meet these huge needs?
So what we are doing for rehabilitation right now, we are working in mainly 3 areas. So Deir el-Balah, which is middle area, Khan Younes, just the coast side, and Gaza City. And we have multidisciplinary teams. So we employ about 230 professionals between physiotherapists, occupational therapists, nurses, psychologists, and social workers. So every time we have a team of people that go to different settlements. So we're talking about either UNRWA shelters or 10 settlements around UNRWA shelters. And we provide rehabilitation or nursing, healthcare services inside the shelters. So we don't work in hospitals. We have few organizations that work in hospitals or have built their own field hospital. What we do is we work in the community. So we go to the people that, as we were saying before, are discharged very quickly from the hospital. So we tend to go there. And we provide rehabilitation session, nursing sessions, so mainly wound dressing. We had a picture before that came up. We provide assistive technology. Unfortunately, assistive technology means crutches, walkers, wheelchairs. This is very complicated because there is very, very little access to health, equipment. So there is not a continuous entrance of health equipment in Gaza from assistive technology, as I was saying, but also consumables, gloves, bandages. We cannot perform bandages if we don't have gloves, or if we don't have masks, or if we don't have. So we provide these sessions in these 3 areas, usually at home. One of the challenges that we're having right now, since the beginning, but is the disruption of care, because there is every day there is an evacuation order. So every day people move. So we go to the house of people, to the house or to the shelters, etc. And if there is an evacuation order today in one area, then people need to move. And we don't always find them back, like really speaking practically. Like our team is in this shelter. If this shelter is evacuating, then people are moving. And so sometimes we have 1 session to 2 sessions. That's not enough. That's just not enough. So that's a very big problem. Another big problem that we have is malnutrition and hygiene conditions. So we know that if you don't have a good level of nutrition, then you heal slower. Okay, so speaking very plainly. So if in this moment in Gaza we have low level of malnutrition, like a high level of malnutrition, and so these wounds never heal. So they need longer terms of treatment, and in the meantime there is disruption of care. And in the meantime there is hygiene issues, as Daniel was already saying before. If you live on a tent on the floor with one toilet for 30,000 people, that also increase of course the possibility of infection, which increase the possibility of amputation. So we're talking about numbers that change very quickly, unfortunately for the worse, because of these conditions.
Thank you very much, Maria Marelli, for those very interesting explanations about your work as a physiotherapy specialist for HI. So thank you, Maria. And now I call Nick Orr. Thank you for joining me here. So,
bonjour.
Welcome. Oh, you want to do that in French?
No.
Well, welcome here, Nick Orr. You're the head of operations for HI in Gaza. You're a deminer. You have 25 years of experience in what you call explosive ordnance disposal. You also were in Gaza a few months ago, April, May.
Yeah, March, April, May. Yeah.
After one entire year of bombing and violence in Gaza, how would you describe the situation from your long experience in different countries and war zones, Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Mali, Jordan, Kuwait? You've been all those countries and worked there. Can it be compared, the Gaza situation, to any of them?
No. What I've seen in Gaza is the worst I've ever seen in my life, from my experience. I'd say the closest thing I've ever seen would probably be Mosul, post-ISIS, when the place was heavily bombarded by a coalition force trying to expunge the ISIS forces from there. That looked something similar, but this is on such a larger scale. The western side of Mosul, probably about 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, was devastated. This is an entire country, it's an entire people. 50 to 62% of all buildings damaged, 90,000 people injured, 43,000 plus killed. It's absolutely astonishing what you see on a daily basis.
So you were in Rafah mostly. What can you tell us about the visit? What struck you most?
Yeah, I'd say what struck me most, and first and foremost, was the density of the population in Gaza. 2.4 million people, and you've got 1.2 million people squeezed into an area that I would consider to be the size of my home village, Rafah. It's not very big at all. It was so densely populated. There's not really any pictures behind me to give it a true scale, but there's no way I can conduct a response to any kind of explosive ordnance disposal with that level of density. It's a bit like trying to deal with a bomb inside of a football stadium that's full of people. It simply can't be done. I can't set the conditions for a safe, render safe procedure. Then I can't attempt it. As simple as that. I must preserve life, and with that level of population, there's nowhere for them to go for me to work. And while I'm dealing with one kind of device that's been found, then you can bet your bottom dollar there's another 10 in the next 100 meters to it. There's so much stuff lying around, so much stuff under the rubble. As I open a door to get access to one device that's been reported, I'll find another 10. And that's going to go on for a very, very long time.
What is precisely the nature of the contamination caused by explosive weapons in Gaza?
It's fairly simple stuff from what we're seeing at the moment, and it comes from the air. It's dropped by aircraft. They're fairly precise. It's sent by artillery, which is less precise, and there's a lot more of it. It's sent by the Navy, fired from the sea, or it's stuff that the soldiers have been using actively on the ground, such as mortars or grenades. So broadly speaking, you've got large airdrop weapons ranging up to 2,000 pounds, 1,000 kilograms. Some smaller ones of those small diameter bombs can be 250 kilos. they're utterly devastating in the urban context. There's really no need for them. They'll take out an entire tower block. The mortars, again, and the artillery, less precise, more of it. And yeah, there's quite a lot of those. And those, unfortunately, is where the real danger is going to come, because they're easily moved, they're easily handled. So people have kind of, when they go back to their homes, they want to reclaim their lives, they want to bury their loved ones. They're going to find these items, and they're going to want to deal with them themselves, and either pick up one and move it to a garden. Okay, I got that one right. They pick up the next one, and they don't get it right, and they'll never get anything right again. They are absolutely lethal.
And how urgent is the essential work in terms of mine clearance?
For UXO contamination, so can't do her job unless I can do mine first and create some kind of safe space for other humanitarian actors to move into. So it's not just about getting around the broader context of UXO problem, because we have to prioritize our approach. Where do we start in such an awfully contaminated area as Gaza? We've got to start somewhere, so we prioritize the areas. I would be looking at bakeries so people can eat bread. I'd be looking at Oxfam facilities and wash facilities so people can have drinking water and potable water on regular supply. I'd work at that, and then we can work down those high priority areas, and we can get to medical establishments, clinics, facilities, distribution points, and we work through those until we can get to such a point where we've got a meaningful impact. We've got safe spaces for humanitarians to work. We've got safe spaces where people can live and eke out their existence. As you can imagine, none of that is anywhere close to happening unless we've got a meaningful ceasefire that's going to last. There's no point in me clearing some ground and it's going to be bombed the next day.
So I guess only a ceasefire could allow a true mine action work to start.
Yeah, there's no peace without a ceasefire, and there is no UXO work, mine action work, humanitarian mine action work without a ceasefire.
You going back to Gaza in a few weeks, bombing is still going on. How can you work in these conditions?
It's difficult. I make myself as visible as possible, dress something like that. And I allow people to know where I'm working. We deconflict with all our authorities so they know what we do and know where we're going, and they know there are no surprises. When I roll up, I'm in a car with HI on it, and we try to be as visible as possible. It does get close. We have been caught out, and yeah, it can be scary, but the work must go on.
From your point of view as an explosive ordnance operator, what are now the main challenges posed by the contamination in Gaza now and, of course, in the following months and years, of course?
Yeah, good question. So I've kind of tried to highlight, we have areas that we need to work at. So there needs to be a coordinated approach, which at the moment is being done through the UN, through En Masse. And we need to look at these, prioritising which areas we go into first, how we're going to do that, where we're going to do that. But we need that ceasefire. So we'll get the ceasefire, then we can prioritise areas. We can move into areas and we can go into key life-saving structures and, grain silos, bakeries, water, hospitals, and anywhere that's preserving life through its presence and helping the people. That's priority number one. And priority number two will be then structures which aid other structures to do that. So then we've got the humanitarian access. So that other humanitarians, the World Food Kitchen, ACTED, the UN, OCHA, UNRWA, they can all have safe spaces to work so that they can do their work as well. It's going to take a long, long time to make a dent in the problem. I was asked this question in Paris yesterday. How long will it take to clear out Gaza? It won't be done in our lifetimes. We are, this week, 80 years after World War II, we're still clearing ordnance from the European mainland and from my home country of England 80 years after that. Now, a lot of that is deep buried stuff, but it still has an effect, it still works, and it can still hurt people. So yeah, we're a long way off.
Yeah. You've told us a little bit before about the density of the population, but how does precisely the urban context worsen the situation?
The buildings of Gaza are fairly new. I think you can get some kind of understanding of behind me there. So the one behind me at the back there, that's fairly short. If you go down into Khan Younes, some of the buildings are nearly 10 stories high. They've all been hit by ordnance, kinetic activity, and they're hanging over, leaning over, and then me and my teams are expected to move into that and clear that of ordnance. I'm not going in that building until that building's been made safe. So do I deal with the ordnance or do I deal with the building? What is the greater threat to me? I have to make that assessment on the ground. I'm also making an assessment of the buildings that next to it. If that one falls down, will it knock the other one down and will it hurt my teams? So we really have to consider the urban decay, the urban damage, as well as the ordnance, and we kind of roll the two. I'm always dancing between the line is what is the greater danger to me and my teams, and which danger should I be reacting to at the moment. So urban bomb disposal, especially in a high-rise situation, very, very dangerous, very complicated.
Last question about your relationship to the population. How can you explain to this population, the children especially, how to deal with unexploded weapons and ordnance? How are education and pedagogy possible, even if in this war situation?
It's possible. It's very possible. I think in every situation I've ever been in, when I've conducted this kind of work, we have a risk education program. Explosive ordnance risk education is taught across a lot of humanitarian actors across Gaza are teaching risk education to families, children's communities, elders, wives, brothers, sisters. And we're telling them, and we're not telling them how to deal with it, we're telling them what not to do with it. So, for instance, you know, people want to help me, but it's not helping me if they're picking up ordnance and bringing it to my door. It's really, you know, it's a case of leave it alone, mark it, tell an elder, I'll come in, I'll look at it, I'll assess it, and I'll do what I can at that time with it to make your lives easier. So it really is seeing it, understanding it, and recognizing it, and then moving away is the bigger message. And we have to pass that down as far as we can to everybody, because unbelievably, despite everything that's going on in Gaza, I still see people playing with UXO every time I walk out the door. And I can't believe they don't know what it does and what it is. We do educate, but the message has to go on forever.
Thank you, Nick Orr. Please, Maria and Daniel, come back here in front of the room with me. And so thank you very much for all your contribution and information. We'll now take a few questions. Nous allons prendre des questions, français or in English. And please, of course, online, either written or if you want to ask for the questions yourself, please just raise your hand online. Just wait for the microphone, yes. And we already have, maybe we'll start with the lady behind and then, of course, here.
Hello, thank you very much for this discussion is really interesting. My name's Kazmira Jafford from Geneva Solutions. A question both for Nick and Daniel. Nick, you mentioned making yourself visible and alerting authorities of your whereabouts. To what extent does the emblem, these jackets that you wear, still work? Do you feel that those guarantees for humanitarians are still there? We've seen the number of injuries and deaths amongst humanitarian aid workers rise, and this war deaths being like no other. So if you could comment on that, and Daniel as well. And actually, I'll just leave it there. I'll come back.
I'll take that one. Yeah, do I feel safe? I'm as visible as I possibly can be. That is not my active dress sense, but it works. It shows everyone exactly who we are, what we're doing. It's kind of universally recognized as like an NGO uniform, so we all wear those vests, we all wear our own colors, and we've got that big badge on us. Also, when I'm working in and around the area, I get the biggest company flag I can get and I nail it to the floor so that anybody flying above can see exactly who I am, what I'm doing at the time. There is always a case, and it's happened a few times, of being the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I know a couple of the NGOs have been hurt in that way. I can't mitigate against that. That's just one of the risks I have to accept in doing my job.
Sorry, maybe Daniel, you'll comment on the follow-up, but just do you think that the emblem is being respected, where you've alerted authorities to your whereabouts and you're operating? Are there cases, we've heard other humanitarian workers talking about how that's not being respected, and can you comment on the number of injuries amongst your? Have there been any of your staff that have been injured in the workplace?
Alors, j'ai pas d'informations sur les statistiques des blessés. Ce que je peux dire, c'est que, en effet, les humanitaires ne sont plus aussi protégés qu'avant, je pense, dans leur statut, même s'ils sont bien visibles, même si leurs camions sont visibles, si vous avez des habits. Donc, nous constatons malheureusement que les humanitaires, ils sont tout aussi exposés au danger que toutes les autres personnes qui sont sur place. Ça fait partie aussi de nos efforts de plaidoyer que nous pouvons mener auprès des différents acteurs, notamment des États, afin qu'il y ait vraiment une meilleure protection des acteurs humanitaires. Je pense savoir qu'il y a eu des discussions là-dessus dans le Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies. Et la Suisse s'est engagée activement pour faire passer cette intervention. Mais c'est clair que tout ce que nous faisons dans les différents contextes reste extrêmement dangereux et parfois nous empêche d'intervenir.
Robert James Parsons, independent journalist. A question perhaps for the director, Mr. Suda-Lang. How many casualties have you suffered, that is, dead and injured there in Gaza over the past year? You, that is you collectively, Handicap International.
Alors, si mes informations sont bonnes, nous avons perdu deux collaborateurs, collaboratrices depuis le récent, enfin depuis le 7 octobre 2023. Maria, tu pourras peut-être compléter. Nous avons perdu donc une collaboratrice, mère de famille, vers la fin de l'année passée, et puis encore plus récemment un collaborateur, alors qu'il était dans son temps libre en train de travailler comme pompier bénévole. Donc ça, c'est pour l'instant les pertes que nous avons à déplorer dans notre organisation.
Et les blessés, vous avez subi de... Non. Alors, tant mieux.
Très certainement.
Not directly. Not long-term injuries that I'm aware of. No. I mean, most of our staff live and work, but also live, you know, very close to where there might be casualties or where bombs might fall, so they might have been impacted, but not long-term injuries, no, of my knowledge.
J'ai travaillé à Gaza, moi aussi, au CICR, et je me rends compte un peu des choses. Vu que pratiquement tout est détruit à Gaza, avec ces bombardements journaliers, comment est-ce que votre staff, enfin les internationaux, disons les gens qui viennent de l'extérieur, vous dormez sur place ou vous sortez de la bande de Gaza pour aller dormir en Israël où c'est un peu plus tranquille? Comment vous faites pour assurer la sauvegarde de vos délégués, enfin disons de vos collaborateurs non locaux?
Alors, je vais commencer à répondre, après je passe le micro à Maria. Donc, la plus grande partie de nos équipes, ce sont des personnes donc, locales. Nous avons très très peu d'expats. Donc, les personnes locales habitent sur place, vivent sur place, sont confrontées aux mêmes contraintes que la population locale en termes d'approvisionnement d'eau, de nourriture, de médicaments. Et puis après, il y a un très petit nombre d'expatriés, dont mes deux collègues ici, qui sont envoyés sur une semaine ou 2 semaines sur place et puis après qui reviennent. Donc, Maria, tu peux expliquer ça mieux que moi.
Yeah, I'm going to explain how it was a few months ago and then I would leave it to Nick. So until Rafah border was open, we were entering through Rafah and we were staying in from 1 to 3 weeks, accordingly to the security, what the security allowed, and we were sleeping inside. We were sleeping in our premises, in our office. And as Nick was saying before, we notify that this is an HI office, we notify that there are HI staff living there. So this is what we were doing before, when Rafah was still open, and I will let Nick continue.
Yeah, so if I'm picking up the thread here quickly, where do we stay? So we were staying in Rafah. We got the invasion order for Rafah. That meant that the entirety of Rafah became a red area overnight. We watched the Hill of the Martyrs is the highest point of Rafah, and we could see from our guest house, we could see the fighting getting closer and closer. One of those situations in life, that was the day I was leaving, and they shut down the gate, and we were stuck in there for another month. We moved from Rafah, we moved to Berdabella, we moved from Berdabella, we moved to Al-Mawasi, so we're on the coast. And again, just like the local people, we're following the high pressure to low pressure and trying to pick the safest options of where we can stay and still conduct some meaningful operations from there. But we take what you can get. We sleep on the floor in sleeping bags or on a mattress, and we eat what we can get, and you're probably going to get a shower once a week. It's no picnic, but we can make it work.
Thank you. We have two online questions from Ines Ward. How many Handicap International personnel do you have on the ground in Gaza at any given time? And how long do missions on the ground last for? And is it hard to find personnel willing to go to Gaza? Maybe Daniel?
Alors oui, comme j'ai dit, nous avons 70 personnes actuellement qui travaillent pour Handicap International à Gaza, plus un réseau de 300 bénévoles, donc les agents communautaires. Est-ce que c'est difficile de trouver du personnel? Maria va mieux dire que moi. À mon avis, ça reste extrêmement compliqué de trouver du personnel, mais surtout les conditions de vie et de travail sont énormes, ils sont vraiment extrêmes. Nous trouvons du personnel donc expatrié qui est d'accord d'aller sur place pour justement remplacer et puis aussi pour soulager un peu le personnel local, pour leur apporter peut-être un peu de motivation et d'énergie à des personnes qui sont extrêmement fatiguées. Donc nous avons un tournus dans notre organisation, nous avons un roster d'urgence, donc une espèce de pool avec des professionnels qui se déclarent prêts et prêtes pour intervenir dans des situations d'urgence quand il faut. Donc c'est des personnes qui sont basées par exemple en Suisse ou en France ou en Belgique, puis on peut les appeler quand il faut, et puis ça permet aussi de ne pas toujours avoir le même personnel sur place qui, justement confrontés à ces conditions tout à fait extrêmes, doivent aussi être remplacés pour ne pas eux-mêmes rencontrer des situations de problèmes de santé plus tard.
Yeah, I think that we're also, just wanted to add, we are also being very cautious with the international staff that we send in. So we don't want to put people that are not prepared in a condition in which, well, we know is stressful because you hear bombing, you have drones over your head all the time. So we try, of course, as all the organizations, to ensure security for our international staff that enters. But as Nick was saying, there is always a risk. So we also need to have the right people inside. Right now, I will let you, Nick, continue of how many people we have.
I think last time I looked at these numbers, I haven't prepared for that question, 162 local volunteers and international staff working in Gaza at the time. Internationally, I think there's 2 in there at the moment. We're going to raise that. That'll probably hit 4 to 5 over the coming month. But the pipeline restricting access for NGOs, humanitarian actors into Gaza has been reduced to 21 a week. That's for every NGO, UN, the lot, everyone. 21 people a week. That's all we can get in.
And last question from Ines Ward. Comment gardez-vous le moral? Maybe keep the microphone. How do you, these people working for HI, how do you keep high spirits? How do you stay positive?
I think that's possible. A little bit beyond me too. But what you can see the people going through on a daily basis, we can try to be cheerful. We can try and raise spirits and give opportunities to children, We have some outreach programs. You've seen them on the pictures above. Do some very, very good work there. But keeping them high-spirited in the conditions they're in, I think, is almost beyond any human estimation of what the people of Gaza have gone through at the moment. Everyone's got a story to tell, and everyone's lost someone, and it's really, really, really difficult to see. But it's also one of the most heartwarming things you will see there, as you know, they share their food with you, they smile with you, and tell you a joke, and go about their day. So yeah, it's quite beautiful sometimes.
Thank you very much for your presentations. My name's Tim Waits. I'm with the Australia mission. I'm a humanitarian advisor, not a disarmament person. But you mentioned the explosive weapons in populated areas, which I think is a declaration that was led by the Irish. I guess this is the worst example you can imagine of explosive weapons in populated areas. I mean, does this declaration fall under international humanitarian law? I mean, is there any way that there can be retribution against what we're seeing? Or is there a sort of proportionality argument to this? Thank you.
You want me? I can.
I think it comes down to proportionality. Do you need to drop a £2,000 bomb on top of a house or a block of flats? So if we're taking, we had the actors and the combatants inside of Palestine, Gaza, have the technology to be able to seek out and take out one individual, then they can use it. They don't have to drop a £2,000 bomb on a populated block of flats.
Do you have the figures on the number of explosive, unexploded devices there are in Gaza at the moment?
I wish I had £1 for every time I've been asked that question this week. I don't. I can't. We've been told it's 75 million. No, how many? 75,000 tons. I think from my experience, a better figure for you to put into writing would be that 10 to 12% of all ordnance fails. So if we could work out how many have been sent, we know we've got a 10 to 12% deficit that people of my qualification are going to have to go in, find and make safe, destroy, remove. I don't really know how many of which natures have been used. I can tell you that more projectiles will have been used, so things like artillery rounds will have been used than airdrop weapons. Yeah, but they're used it for different purposes. Each item of ordnance has its own designated purpose. It's built for a reason, and it has function actions for a reason. Whether it's a large blast, whether it's to produce fragmentation, or whether it's to go under the ground and then detonate and produce earthshot, which rubblizes foundations. They all have a particular design, so it depends on what they wanted to achieve when they were using them, really. Hope that helps.
Alors, si ce n'est pas le cas, je remercie infiniment l'équipe de Handicap International qui s'est jointe, qui nous a rejoint ce matin au Club Suisse de la Presse, Marelli, Daniel Suda-Lang et Nick Orr. Thank you, and I think we can thank you for your great and remarkable work. Merci pour votre travail à Gaza et ailleurs, évidemment, dans le monde. Madame, monsieur, merci pour votre attention. Et puis, on poursuit la discussion autour d'un verre et d'un petit cocktail. Merci pour votre attention. Merci en ligne aussi.